Hi, I have a mic and a pulse, and today I'm going to talk about the RPG systems shown in the recent Starfield Gameplay Reveal. First, I know I said the next video would be on New Vegas. I'm currently on my 15th draft trying to figure out if I have way too much to say or absolutely nothing, and it'll be out either soon, eventually, or never. But I'd like to strike while the iron is hot on this news. So, we only actually got about 20 seconds on the skill system, but what we saw shows a lot and teases more about what we can expect from this game. So I'm going to start with a lightning round of overall impressions, move to a breakdown of the system itself, and then overanalyze some individual perks to figure out what we can tell about the game itself. So, lightning round on top 3 points of excitement and concern, not counting RPG stuff we'll discuss later, in 3, 2, 1. Points of excitement. 1. William Shen is lead quest designer, and as I said in my Far Harbor video, he's easily one of the best writers of Bethesda, and I'm happy for his well-deserved promotion and look forward to seeing more of his handiwork. 2. I'm glad there's spaceflight, and the ship customization doesn't seem to have skimped on aesthetics or functionality. 3. I love the variety of backstory and character building stuff the character creator gives you, and that having living parents is one of the traits. Also appreciate there's room to be a bad guy if you so choose. Points of concern. 1. The ground-based combat looks pretty anemic, though the main fight is in a low-level area, and it might be more intense against stronger enemies and with stronger weapons. 2. The 1,000 procedurally generated planets feel like they could easily be the Mako levels for Mass Effect all over again, and while they'd be a good place to put Radiant quests are generally never as good as actual handcrafted quests, though apparently the game is said to have 3 times as much dialogue as Skyrim, so I don't think we'll be starved for combat. 3. The game forcing you to make eye contact with NPCs you're talking to is a hate crime. So, RPG mechanics. First, what we know. There are no attributes. The system is based around skill perk hybrids, or skirks, that like Elder skills are raised through use, and like perks have only 4 ranks with a decent sized bonus for each of them, and require a skill/perk point to be spent to unlock or level them up. Leveling up a perk also gives it a more elaborate and marketable patch. There are 5 skill trees: physical, social, combat, science, and tech. They range between 15 to 18 in the 4 trees we've seen, so we can likely expect between 80 to 85 skills total. Each category has 4 tiers of skill, with the higher tiers unlocked by leveling up the lower tiered skills. The threshold seems to be getting 1 skill to rank 3, but it might be more complicated math. There is a trait system. That being said, they seem to be more centered around role-playing than mechanics. One major unknown is the role of cybernetics. The cyberneticist player background clearly established that augmentations exist in the setting, and while it's ambiguous as to whether you can use them yourself, having a cyberneticist character who isn't allowed to use cybernetics would be flat out weird, and at least one of the perks, possibly several, looks like it might be designed to pair with cybernetics. Whether any such system will be minor, acting like a few pieces of gear, or a major component of the game's systems, like in Deus Ex or Cyberpunk, or something that's big on some playthroughs but not on others, like the magic in Skyrim, remains unknown, though I'm leaning towards Skyrim style. So analysis time. Is this going to be amazing, terrible, something in between? Does it, as Todd said, combine the best features of their other systems, or, as some dread, the worst? Well, honestly, it seems like it's going to have the strengths and the weaknesses of both the Elder Scrolls and Fallout. The main strength of the Elder Scrolls-style practice system is that it gives you more control over your leveling. The speed at which you level up individual skills and reach higher tiers in the trees is based on how much focus you want to put into leveling them, not your overall level. Though I would add the caveat that for some things like combat, you're probably not going to reach the 400 kills required to get 3rd tier without reaching at least a decent level. 3rd to 4th is just 15 minutes of firing the coachman into a field, though. You do also need to spend a skill point from leveling up to rank up a skill, though it's unknown whether it's going to only be the 1 skill point like in Fallout, or if they're going to give you 2 or 3 to compensate for having both to pay for the skills and to work for them. The weakness of Elder skills is that it's only fun to practice abilities that are fun to use anyway, and even for skills that are fun, it can get grindy if you're using them just to level them up. This could be exacerbated by the presence of 85 skills and 2 trees, science and tech, that likely contain a lot of crafting and or sifting through menus picking research projects. However, there is reason to hope that it's not as grindy as could be feared. First, while there are 85 skills, many actions will likely use more than 1 at a time. E.g., shooting a robot with a shotgun fired from the hip gives you shotgun, ballistic, robotics, and targeting experience all at once, and probably some from skills we don't have info on yet, so it's not going to take 4.5 times as much grinding as Skyrim did, though I will say that some skills like pharmacology will likely work primarily on their own. Second, it's clear that the tech and science trees aren't just all crafting all the time. We can see that things like lockpicking, medicine, and robot fighting are also going to be there. Third, Todd referred to leveling up skills by using them and completing challenges. Now, it's possible that challenge is just a weird way of saying using them a bunch of times, since that's what's happening in the examples we've seen, but it's possible that some skills might not require direct grinding to level up, e.g. spaceship design leveling up from space combat instead of building 1,000 pieces of cowling. So while it's half like the Elder Scrolls, it's also a lot like Fallout, especially Fallout 4, in that it's heavily based around perks. This honestly worries me a little, because one of 4's huge problems was that because it folded skills into the perk system and had a restrictive grid, it didn't actually have room for that many perks, and because about half of them were either conceptually bad or just not strong enough to be viable, it ended up with only 25 to 30 actual good ones, which limited build variety. Now, Starfield will have 80 to 85, which is more than in Fallout 4, but not that much more, and they may have a lot more basic skills taking up room, which could cause the same limitations in variety, though as a counterbalance, each skill will have an additional effect at rank 4, though Fallout 4 perks did often have additional effects too, which didn't really solve the grinding. The lack of an attribute system also removes a potential layer of depth to things, though I will say that I think attributes work a lot better in fantasy, where magic and swords draw their power from you, than in sci-fi, where guns draw their power from gunpowder and batteries. There are some upsides though, especially that there seems to be a heavy emphasis on synergy, combining many smaller effects into large boosts in power overall, rather than having a single skill controlling each weapon. There also seems to be a lot of research and crafting to do, giving you a wide variety of gear upgrades to combo into your skills, and there is, again, the unknown role of cybernetics, which is quickly becoming the my girlfriend in Canada of RPG mechanics, and could have a huge impact on what you do. All in all, a lot will come down to how interesting the actual skills are. Part 3, in which specific skills are analyzed in an attempt to glean further information about the game's overall systems. So it's honestly way too early to make a call on how interesting the skills will be overall, given that we've only seen details on the Tier 1 starter skills and anything that was between the cursor and ballistics when they switched the combat tree, but I think through the power of over-analysis we can still gain some useful information on the overall game. Now, for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to get into every single skill we can see, just the ones that seem to provide useful information, though if you're into that sort of thing, I will release a supplement trying to figure out the role of almost every perk. So first, the basic skills that we actually saw the effects of. A lot of them are fairly standard things that tell us nothing, like wellness and weightlifting, which just confirm that health and carrying stuff will return. No shockers. I think the most interesting are diplomacy, which is essentially the intimidation skill from Fallout 4, but available at a very low level, suggesting a greater possibility of non-lethal conflict resolution, and the persuasion skill, which shows that speech challenges will again be somewhat luck-based. The question is, though, are there going to be factors other than the persuasion skill in speech challenges, such as faction reputation or NPC disposition? Because there's a risk that if you have to use persuasion to level it up and the game is non-linear, then any given quest could be your 5th, at which point even a dedicated persuader won't have much experience in the skill, or your 50th, at which point even someone who prefers to shoot their way out could have mastered it, making checks based solely on one skill difficult to balance. That being said, there also seems to be a bribe skill, and depending on your reaction to being roared at by a gorilla, an intimidation one, so you do have options, and may also just be able to save scum until RNGesus blesses you. So, moving on to the specific trees. The half of the science tree that's visible doesn't actually contain anything I can interpret into new information other than that plants are confirmed. Combat we have more info on due to them scrolling over it. Much of it is either basic weapon skills or run-of-the-mill weapon handling stuff. The knee bones heavily suggest limb damage because, while they are intact, the kneecap is not known for staying intact in works of fiction, and the perk still has 3 upgrade ranks to go. Points of confusion are the marksman and particle beam skills, as marksman either means there are bows and arrows in space, and that they're fairly high-level weapons, or is just a general boost to your shooting ability with a logo referencing the Elder Scrolls. And particle beams could either be an upgrade to lasers or the competing type of energy weapons. If separate, it is unknown whether particle beam weapons would primarily be for melting them or for electrocuting them. Notable exclusions are 1. A generic energy weapon skill, which suggests that lasers and particle beams may be the only types of energy weapons, though if more exotic weapons exist, they might be governed by science or tech, like science weapons in the Outer Worlds are. 2. An unarmed skill, and any melee skills other than the basic damage perk. This one I honestly think is just because most of unarmed or melee is going to be under the physical tree, because A, they would fit there, B, there's a skill with a snake and a fist that looks like it's either a paralyzing strike or just martial arts in general, and C, there's a background called Bouncer, which while heavy on diplomacy and persuasion, in real life would not be complete without a little bit of unarmed combat. Next comes the social tree, which I don't really see much that tells us anything we don't already know, except the already discussed persuasion system. Finally, the half of the physical tree we saw is absolutely crazy looking. I mean, we have weightlifting, wellness, and what appears to be a hunger management skill, but the other 4 we can see are the aforementioned snake fist combo, someone opening their cybernetic third eye, which also matches a poster in neon, someone in the lotus pose activating their chakras and expanding their mind, and 2 hands cupping either a flame or a lotus. So, since the third eye seems pretty cybernetic, I'd wager a guess that the other mystical-looking stuff also refers to cybernetics, though I can't really speculate further on what their actual roles could be. Now, I would like to take a few leaps of logic to say that given that the third eye sign in neon could easily be the sign for a cult or religion, and the cybernetics seem associated with Eastern religions, I am guessing that the enlightened referred to in the traits menu are a cybernetic cult. Now, since the Sanctum Universum is clearly a rival organization, it is likely that characters who were raised universal would be disinclined to cybernetically enhance themselves, suggesting that cybernetics will remain fully optional and not as one of the basic systems of the game, like in Deus Ex. There are also 3 skills cut off on the left side. The top one looks like it could be a ghost if you continue some of the lines a little, which I'm guessing makes it the sneak skill. The middle looks like a guy leaning backwards fast enough to make some whoosh lines, which would be dodging. The bottom one, if you mirrored it to make it look symmetrical, which is not guaranteed to work but is better than nothing, gets you something that looks like a downwards arrow pointing to concentric circles, which gives me kind of an impact landing ground pound vibe, possibly using the jetpack, but it could also be pointing an eye as part of the mysticism cybernetic stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what I got, outside of just listing every single guess at what a skill does, which I might actually do as a supplemental video in the next couple of days before getting back to my New Vegas video, which should be out soon eventually or never.